Hello, hello. Thank you for joining me today. Dana here. This year I decided I wanted to join in on the full deck challenge by Sanuki Art. This is where you take a deck of cards and you essentially alter one a week, and it looks like a lot of fun, so I figured I'd join. This is actually card number 10 that I'm joining in on, but I will go back and make the other ones. The cards that I decided to use have a linen finish, so they're not super shiny. I'm hoping that will help with the adding bits and bobs that they actually stick to it later on. For this year's challenge, one of the quote-unquote rules was that you had to have a constant item throughout the challenge, throughout the full deck of cards. What I decided to do was actually use this stamp set. This is a Curator stamp set from Tim Holtz. The reason why I did that is because I can make little pieces with it, and I can make them pretty much any color that I want. So I don't have to worry about, if I have this or that may match, that would count as my constant item. I also decided that I wanted to shuffle the deck of cards. Yes, I know I shuffle uniquely. I've never been able to shuffle a deck of cards like with the center. I've always had to do it on the corner. Anyhow, I did decide to shuffle the cards. For me personally, I felt that I would probably get annoyed doing the same suit for, however many cards, 13 or whatever, however many cards there is, and then moving on to the next suit and moving on to the next suit. So what I wanted to do is basically just be surprised. So I shuffled the cards a couple times, put them back in the box backwards, and then I'm just going to randomly pick a card every time. I say that, but I did cheat for the first card, which I'll explain. You'll see that in the next video. So to start off altering this card, I took this washi tape and I'm just tearing all around the edges and putting it right in the middle. This pretty much ends up being covered by the end of the card, but I really wanted it to cover the king because he didn't really fit in with my design, so I wanted to cover that. But I did leave one of the little K's in the corner free. And I decided for this, I think I'm going to do the left-hand corner, the top left, for every card. So once I got that stuck down, I did go over it with my sanding tool. I did it around the edges just to get off the extra and kind of rough it up a bit. And then I also went on the face of the card and kind of scratched that and roughed that up a bit. I had this piece of tissue paper in my stash and I thought it might be cool to add it on. This was just crinkled up and then put on my jelly plate to create like a crack texture on something that I was working on, and ended up saving the piece of tissue paper. So I'm just going to add that on the front, and I'll be adhering everything down with either my collage medium or just some white liquid glue. I'll probably do like I normally do, and I'll switch between the Sizzix and the Barely Arts glue. After I got everything glued down, I did remove all of the excess around the edges, and then I made sure my little K was visible up the top corner. After it dried, I grabbed my sanding tool again and just went around all the edges to get off the excess. Then I grabbed Vintage Photo Distress ink and my foam blending tool, and I'm just inking around the edges just to give it a bit more of a grungy feel. And then I grabbed all my little ephemera pieces that I had pulled, and I'm just inking around the edges of those. The moth piece that I have here is from a digital printout from Louisa Heinzel. And then this is one of the mini paper dolls from Tim Holtz. I'm just gluing the moth wings slash butterfly wings to the back of her to make her look like she has wings. And I'm just inking around the edges of the rest of my little bits and bobs. To grunge up everything a bit more, I did grab my distress crayons. The first one that I'm using here is Vintage Photo, and then the second one that I will be using is Scorched Timber. And I'm just taking that, rubbing it along the bottom and side edge of the playing card, and then I wet my finger on a slightly damp baby wipe, and then I'm just rubbing it around. You can do this with a brush if you don't like to use your fingers. Me personally, I like to use my fingers for pretty much everything. I don't mind having messy hands. So that's what you'll see me do most of the time, is just rub everything around with my fingers. After I decided on the rough layout that I wanted, I'm going to go ahead and glue everything down. And like I said, I'm going to be using my Barely Arched glue mostly for adhering the little bits and bobs. This is another piece from that Louisa Heinzel printout that I found in my stash, so I'm just adding that to the top there. The rest of the little ephemera pieces are from different ephemera packs from Tim Holtz. And then of course I have my little constant item piece from that stamp set. I forgot to mention earlier, but the prompt for this one is vintage with brown splatter. So for my brown splatter, I decided to use my Scorched Timber Distress paint. I put a little bit of that on my glass mat, and then I do like to thin it out with a little bit of water and splatter it on with my fan brush. I like to use a wet fan brush, so before I mix it in the paint, I actually spray my brush with the water as well. You can use it dry. I prefer to use it wet. I think the splatters come out a little bit better. They're a little bit juicier. so to speak. So since the paintbrush is already wet, it doesn't soak up all the paint, and so the paint will actually splatter onto your project. And then I dried that off a bit with my heat tool. And for the final step, I'm just adhering my little girl with the moth wings. And that finishes off my first playing card, but actually number 10 in the series. I hope you enjoyed. I will link Suki Art's YouTube channel down in the description box below if you'd like to follow along and join in the challenge. This is a really fun challenge. I've been kind of following it for a while now, but I hadn't actually decided to do it, so I'm glad I decided to do it this year. But anyway, again, thank you for joining me. Please do consider subscribing and liking the video if you have not. And as always, take some time to pamper your inner goddess, and I will see you in the next one.